Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our 3-day workshop from blank pages to a writing machine. Thank you for joining me for day 2. I am really excited. This is probably my favorite day of the 3-day workshop. So I'm really excited to hop in and we're actually going to go ahead and launch right into it. So that way I can make sure we try to keep this to an hour. But as always, if you all have questions, please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom app in order to ask any questions that you have during this time. When I see them pop in, if I'm in a good place, I'll be sure to answer them in the moment, or otherwise I will save them for the end of today's session. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, hopefully you all can see this. So I'm going to get my Q&A here right next to me so I can make sure I see anything. And let's go ahead and dive in. So of course, yesterday, just a quick little recap. What we did on day 1 was identify your theme. So I'm really hoping today going into this, you have a very clear idea of what your ultimate theme is for your book, that overarching message, promise, the delivery, essentially, the delivery that you are making for the reader. It's, a lot of times, especially if you're writing something intimate like a memoir or inspirational book or self-help book, I always say to kind of look at it like a letter to that target audience. What is the point of it? What is the point of the book? The purpose of the book? What is that outcome, the message, the promise? So hopefully you are clear on that. You know your genre. So if you are writing nonfiction, you're looking at memoir, inspirational, self-help, thought leadership. If you are looking at fiction, of course, there are so many, and there are so many subgenres from, romance to thriller to action, adventure, etc. Hopefully you worked on your baseline pitch, that 1 to 3 sentences that will help you intrigue your audience, right? Like get them excited about the book that you're writing, to know what's coming. And like I said, it's something that helps you in the very beginning because it helps set that direction for where your book is going. But it's something that you're going to be using often. So you'll refine it throughout your writing process as the book continues to take shape. It's not on here, but hopefully you know that one target person specifically that you are writing this book to, hopefully someone that you have an emotional attachment to, because again, it brings clarity in your writing, and that is what we're going for here. And then hopefully you really started brainstorming some ideas of the content in your book, those main points, the stories that you want to be able to weave into your book. Hopefully you took a look at some of the structures that we discussed, and you found one that really resonated with you, or maybe you're starting out with a 3-act structure because it is the simplest in many ways to be able to work with, and you can even apply it to many nonfiction books as well. But then we also went through that A to Z method with specifically self-help, inspirational, thought leadership books. So hopefully you started plotting out your book a little bit with those main points that you want to have included. And then, of course, we talked about the importance of how this is just the first step in your author journey. And if you did everything yesterday, like if you got off that call yesterday and you just tackled all of those homework assignments, it's more than your first step. You're well into your author journey now, which is really, really exciting. Oops. I always hit the button a little too hard. So today's focus is all about goal setting, time management, really hopefully feeling inspired by the end of today's conversation, and then having that momentum, finding something within today's session that inspires you enough to push forward, to have that full, unyielding dedication to writing and completing your book, for whatever that time frame looks like, which we'll talk about today in the goal setting aspect. But if it's in 3 months, you want to have this book completely written, ready to go, then hopefully by the end of today's talk, you will have the momentum you need to reach that point. Okay. So let's dive in to today's stuff. I mentioned this yesterday, but few people who think about writing a book even like they don't even get started in it, right? They just have this thought. Rarely do they actually take the action to make it happen. But there's an even lesser amount who try and then actually complete the book. So the key is to get that momentum going from beginning to end. And so I want to take a little different of an approach on goal setting than what you hear in other settings, especially coming from like the corporate world. You hear a lot about that SMART goals approach, and it's valid, it's effective. But for me, I have to have something that can get my heart, my mind, my soul on the same page. And that is what we're going to be talking about today, because it is what worked for me. No seminar I sat in or training I sat in with the SMART goals ever motivated me the way some of these things I talk about today will, or did. I also have 24 time management techniques that I've personally tested out in my life, and I have tested out in those that I coach. And they're the ones that I have seen work best for a variety of people. And remember, that is the goal here. It's really experimenting with what motivates you, because what motivates you is going to be different than what motivates someone else. So it's really finding that sweet spot of what helps you stay accountable to this goal. So before we go into that, I want to have what I call my little like tough talk moment, right? It's something I'm very passionate about. It's a pep talk that I give myself often, as much as I'm going to be talking to you today about it. And it's a topic that people can easily shut down to because it's addressing things that we don't like to talk about. Goals, dreams, those sound more fun than time management. But when it comes to why we aren't reaching our goals, which is what I'll be talking about today, it kind of takes away that fun element a little bit, right? However, it really helps to figure out the problem so you don't just slap a Band-Aid on it. You're actually fixing what is going on at the root. Okay, you're actually fixing the cause behind why this dream has yet to be achieved, or what's been standing in your way the entire time. We are all busy. I was speaking with one of my clients the other day, and he ended up putting something in his book where it was like, it's incredible that all of this new technology is constantly created to help us save time. But no matter how many times we purchase new technology to help us save time, we still don't have enough of it because we continually fill our plates with more. There's a space, we fill our plates, and we don't even recognize that we're doing it, right? So our author dreams specifically get thrown to the side, especially if, like we talked about yesterday, we don't have that why that drives it. We put everything else in front of writing a book. Then when you decide to actually pursue writing your book or any book, you get these comments, these things thrown at you that make you doubt whether or not you should be adding something else to your plate. Because a lot of people don't value it for what it is. I mean, have you noticed that when you're short on time or restricted on time, that limited time then gets threatened to be taken away? I mean, it happens all the time, right? Like you're like, okay, I have 45 minutes to get this done or to work on this today, or I've got 20 minutes carved out to tackle my book. And it's like suddenly the universe is like, no, this is urgent, this is urgent, this is urgent. You have people you haven't heard from in years finally call you and want to talk to you in that moment. Or, something happens with your child, they fall down, they scrape their knee, they need attention. Like every single time you declare, I have this limited amount of time, this is what I'm going to work on, it's like all of these people, things, experiences, events threaten to take that time away from you. And you have to remember that you are ultimately the only one who can protect your time. And you are the only one that can choose to give it away or not give it away. That time is yours. And it's one thing that I notice over and over again, that we are so quick to give up, when it should be one of those things that we protect just as much as we protect anything else that's of value to us. I can't tell you the number of times that I'm told, I don't know how you do it all. Just because I'm a mom to two littles, I run a business, I have all of these other projects going on, trying to write my own books. There's a lot, like it's continual. Activities, kids' activities constantly, right? Like it's a full plate all the time. And I'm sure you've been told that. How many times have you been going through your life and people are like, how do you have time for all of this? How do you tackle XYZ? How can you keep adding more and more to your plate? I've got one client who she has a full-time job. She volunteers in all of these organizations. She has 5 kids. She has all of their activities and running them to school and everywhere else. And she's still writing her own book. She's still taking on more. And she's like, I can't tell you, like I'm told like 5 times a day, how do you do it all? And how many times have you said it to someone else? And there are 2 parts to this that I want you to be aware of. Usually when someone says that, they are automatically discarding whatever it is as being possible for them. So I don't know how you do it all. I can't do that. I mean, good for you, but I can't do that, right? They're shutting down the idea, they're deflecting it, they're saying that it's out of reach for them, which simply isn't true. And that's why you have to be very aware if you're ever saying that same statement to someone. Like, how are you writing a book when you're doing all these other things? Like, I don't know how you do it. You're removing yourself from that being a possibility for you. And then encourage anyone who verbalizes it to you to not say it as well, because they're blocking themselves from a world of possibilities. No situation is ever going to be the right one until you actually make it happen. It's so easy to say, I could do this if ... instead of just making it happen regardless of your circumstances. Don't get caught in that web of if only, because it's sticky and it's hard to extract yourself from it. I can guarantee that there are successful writers out there with less time, less money, fewer ideas, smaller networks, fewer social media followers who are still making it happen because they want it that badly. So the question with this, with writing this book, with finishing it, this book, with fulfilling your vision, like we talked about yesterday, is how badly do you want this? How much of a priority is it in your life? So as I'm going through the next information, I just want to make sure that your mind isn't going straight to, well, that's not going to work for me. You don't know my life. It's too busy to handle that, or I have XYZ commitments. That's just not going to work for me. I don't want you doing that. Instead, you should be considering each one and wondering, could it work for you? And if so, how? Because you are here with this desire to want to write and finish this book, right? For many of us, it's this book idea that we've been sitting with for years, and you know it's time to do it. So don't put those excuses in front of the way. Really look at all of this information as, okay, could this work for me? And if so, how do I make this happen? Instead of immediately saying it can't. Because many times we don't even give things a try. We're just immediately shutting the door on it. I want to hit on this mindset portion because, I can give you these 24 different time management techniques that we'll be going over today, but none of it will make any difference if you aren't in that right frame of mind. Truly, I mean, too many people will give up before it even sticks. Too many people will blame it on external factors that aren't actually to blame and then never write the book they were destined to write. And y'all, that is heartbreaking how often that happens. I told you that I am very protective of writing dreams. And if someone is ready to write a book, I want to help them get there. Time is the #1 reason I hear why a book isn't being completed. And time is a very real concept, but the thing is, it can also be a very easy crutch. If someone says, I don't have time, I'm maxed out, and you can feel that frazzled energy, the last thing you want to do is push back on them, right? Because the person's time is intimate. It's theirs. It's hard to tell someone what they should be doing with their time because someone is naturally going to get defensive and protection of like what is actually theirs. It becomes a security blanket of excuses that few will ever challenge someone else on. But by this stage in life, most of us can look back and realize it's not like our life has ever been the same. We haven't had the same conflicts, time suckers, circumstances, situations as we have today. I mean, I look back at this time when it felt busy. I was putting off my author dream, but I had half the things going on in my life that I do today, but yet it still wasn't the right time. So how long are we going to continue to put the blame on time when it's truly available to us at different points in our life, yet we still don't do those things that we feel we're called to do, like write a book? It's time to break the trend and address how to make it happen. Because we all have 24 hours in a day. There's no adjusting that time available to us. And it's about how we spend those 24 hours that makes a difference in our success and our impact and the things that we do and our decisions that we make every single day. I mean, I talked yesterday about how, I knew I wanted to be a writer since I was 6 years old. Well, I'm 38 now. That's 32 years of time in between. And by the time I wrote my book, it was almost 3 decades, right, of that difference. So why did I finally choose to do it when I was the most maxed out I've ever been in my life with 2 little kids who are adorable, but never, ever sleep? And it all comes down to knowing your why. Knowing your why, the things that drive you, is what guides your decisions. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions a day. So that's approximately like 1,900 decisions an hour, y'all. Your brain is continually in overdrive. So every time you choose to do something, you're choosing not to do something else, right? So if you're not spending your time writing throughout the day, what are you choosing to do instead? You have to get clear on why you want to become an author, why you want to write this book on your heart, why you feel called to write this particular book idea. Like, why did it land on you? And I'm telling you right now, there's something special about you connected with this book idea. Like, it takes you to bring it to life. There's a reason behind it, and you have to connect with that. The more clear you are on your why, and when the reasons are big enough, and when your why is important enough, that's when all of those decisions, 35,000 decisions a day, are easier to make. It will drive you to do the things that you need to do when you simply don't feel like doing them, because we all get in those ruts. But when you do those things, you feel a lot better when they're done, right? They're not weighing on you anymore. So we did this a little bit yesterday, but imagine for a moment, what would it be like to see your name on a book? You as the author, to see pictures on social media of other people reading your book, to get a message from a reader who says that your book transformed their life. How would that feel? Hold on to that feeling and do not let it go through this entire process. Because anytime there's the emotional tie to your goal, it's proven that your mind will be more likely to work harder to reach that goal. And if there's an attachment to not completing that goal, so for example, say that you're more focused on the enjoyment of watching TV, and then you're considering it painful to write, what do you think you're going to choose? The enjoyment of watching TV, and you're going to avoid the pain of writing. So if you're viewing it that way, you have to shift your perspective. It's kind of like that whole thing of, are you saying I have to write? Are you saying I get to write? Even when you say the difference in that, you can feel the emotional difference in your body, right? Between I have to write or I get to write. I get to write my story. Many people don't set clear goals because they have some element of fear of not reaching them, or they don't want to be wrong. So we are so afraid to be wrong when there's nothing wrong with that. But not setting those goals or saying, I don't know what my goals are, or not having clear ones, honestly, it's a cover for many of us for feeling insecure. Because if you were secure and you believed in yourself and you knew that you were going to reach those goals no matter what, it'd be a no-brainer, right? With setting and reaching them. But the more you allow yourself to resort to unclear or unset goals, the more you are training your brain to live in a space of ambiguity and indecisiveness. When your brain is operating in that way, guess what? Your actions are going to follow. And that means that your path is going to be sloppy and you're not fully going to be committed to this. Hence the whole, like, I want to write a book mentality, but the refusal to do the goal mind work, and then a failed dream as a result. Ultimately, the goals aren't always about what you set, but it's about what you become, who you become afterward. So if you're going through life and you don't have goals, or if they're loose goals, which you have to be very aware of, you're often going to feel unfulfilled or unhappy, stuck, or stagnant. I mean, human beings are biologically wired for growth and contribution. It's like going back to, psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Goal setting helps meet that self-actualization point. So we need to understand how our emotions will change once we go from where we are today to where we want to be. And knowing your why, that is going to anchor you when you need it the most. It's what's going to keep you going, keep you attached to every action that you need to take to reach that goal. Even when you feel like all of the elements are trying to blow you back, take you away from your goal. That why specifically is going to keep you anchored. And the same goes with even, fully knowing your intention in writing this book. Are you writing it strictly to earn money, to convey a message, to influence your readers, to help people solve a problem, to entertain? All of those are equal. I mean, all of those, if that's your reason, they're all good enough. But the point is to have a clear vision of what you want to accomplish with your book, because there are many decisions to make within your entire book writing process, from the storyline to what you want to do once it's actually completed, and what's the right way to get it out into the hands of your readers. For example, do you traditionally publish, self-publish? And if self-publishing, do you go wide or exclusive, right? I mean, those are just very minor questions that you're going to have to answer once this book is completed. And having an idea of your clear goals, your intentions, your vision, all of those elements are going to help you feel so much more confident in every single one of those decisions that you have to make. And then speaking of, we'll talk about some of those publishing paths tomorrow, so you can get a bigger picture of where you want to go in this whole author journey. Okay, so setting clearly defined goals with an action plan in place will truly make all the difference in your writing journey, okay? This is a big part of how I went from my first book taking 10 years to write to my second book taking 30 days. I think my third book was maybe 40 days. I had gotten to a better habit, a better method, a better system. And those are all things that I teach in the Soulful Author Journey program, because I want you all to have those tools, those resources to be able to apply in your own life. It'll help make sure that you don't lose momentum when writing your book, because let's face it, it happens. I wish that we always had like 100% energy through the entire way of writing a book. It can be really easy to find that in the beginning, or even once you pick up the flow, like the quarter to halfway through. Y'all, it's inevitable. I shouldn't say inevitable, but it happens a lot. I see people start to hit a wall come the time about like 80% in their book writing. Then they just start to get exhausted. That energy starts to wear off a little bit. And it's okay for it to wear off a little bit. It's not okay to give up on it completely. So that momentum to keep you going is so important. The mind is powerful because, when you're goal setting, it truly helps with that clarity of your plan. It guides you from one stage to the next, and it helps you figure out how you're going to spend every minute of those 24 hours that you've been given. So let's talk about some of these goal setting techniques. I would recommend choosing one. Okay. I just got this question from one of our clients the other day, who asked, she was trying to combine multiple of these goal setting techniques and it just won't work. Choosing one to start with, and if you feel like it doesn't keep you on track, then try a different one, but don't try to combine these. So let's talk about them. So the first one is setting goals based off of chapter by chapter. Okay. So this is doable if you have your full structure of your story outlined and ready to go. So for example, if you are writing a self-help book or an inspirational book, like we talked about yesterday with that A through Z method, more than likely, you're going to have, I don't know how many ever you have, like 10 main points to talk about. 10 main points that support your overarching theme, purpose, promise of the book. More than likely, those 10 points, each one's going to be an individual chapter. So let's just call it 10. You've got 10 chapters lined out. You have an introduction and you also have a conclusion. So you have 12 chapters total in this hypothetical scenario. So then what you're going to be looking at is always starting with your end goal. So let's say then your goal is to have this book written in 12 weeks. Well, that's a pretty easy thing to figure out, right? Like you're going to work on one chapter every week for the next 12 weeks. But you have to be clear. So what do your weeks look like? Is that a Monday through Sunday? Is it Sunday through Saturday? You have to be that clear. So you don't have room to mess with your own system and to make, last minute changes or to push things off. You have to have this set in stone. So I'm going to work on chapter 1 next week. My goal to work on it is that Monday through Sunday, but it helps if you get even more clear in that. So say, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm going to be writing the first draft for this book. Okay. On Thursday, I'm going to do any additional research that I need to add in supporting facts, to add in supporting details, to better paint the scene, like whatever it is based off the type of book that you're working on. And then Friday, I'm going to read the whole chapter. I'm going to make notes about what needs to be changed. Saturday, I'm going to implement those changes. And then Sunday, I'm going to review it one more time and make any other sort of tweaks. Okay. So you're not just saying, I'm going to write chapter 1 Monday through Sunday of this week. You're instead working out a game plan with what specifically those days look like in order to complete that chapter. And if all you can do is a first draft, that's fine. But then what I would recommend is that you have some time set aside, like 2 weeks after those initial 12 weeks, where it's, 1 week per chapter, then you set aside 2 extra weeks at least to go back through, review your chapters, add elements to it, add transitions, make sure it flows, revise it. The first time writing, y'all, it's always going to be raw. Okay. You're not going to have this beautiful, perfectly polished first draft when you're writing something. So you have to make sure you're building in time to be able to review it and make adjustments as needed. I've seen some writers I've worked with, some clients have come in like just writing like their first drafts, their first time, like they just get so inspired. Like they get these incredible downloads and they'll write these chapters and they're beautiful. But no matter what, when you go back to review it, you're going to see things that you should have added that first round to make it better. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just about really creating the book that your heart is telling you you need to write, and making sure that it upholds that vision and that you're not dialing it in just to hurry up along the process. Although it's great to have some urgency behind this, you also want to make sure that it's a book that you're proud of. So it's balancing that, and that's going to look a little different for all of us. All right, the next one is word count. So I have word count and reverse word count, and so I'm going to talk about the difference. This is one that I use because this is what works for my mind specifically. And again, this is all about what works for you. So for example, I had that second book I wrote. I knew that for the genre, it had to be about 85,000 words. So this is one of the ways to do this. If you're like, I don't know how many words this should have, do some basic research or ask us in the module, like, what is the average word count for this type of book? Like, for example, when we do memoirs, we're always looking at between 60 and 90,000 words. Inspirational or self-help, we're usually looking between 40 and 60,000 words. Fiction is a little different because based off of all the different genres, you're going to be looking at different word counts for sure. So it's harder to ballpark those, but all research based. Like, let us know what you're working on. We can help you with that. But for the genre I was working on with this like second book, for example, 85,000 words was my goal. And I knew I wanted to do it within 30 days. So I did 85,000 divided by 30. And then that was my word count goal every single day. And I knew no matter what, I had to at least hit that number. And then if I could go above that number, all the best. The one thing I want to point out with word count that you have to be very aware of when you're using these goals is that more than likely, even though you're aiming for 85,000 words, you have to remember that your final book is probably not going to be 85,000 words. And the reason why is that a lot gets cut with the editing process. Sometimes a lot gets added through the editing process as well. It can work both ways, but more often than not, a lot gets cut through that editing process. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you know your genre, for example, is between 60 and 80,000 words, please don't aim for just 60,000 words in your first draft. Don't just try to hit the bare minimum because editing will probably mess with that even more. So, but anyway, so with the word count, that's what you can do. Now, if you don't have a specific time in mind right now for when you want to finish this book, you just really want to get into the flow, that habit, that consistency where you're constantly working on it, just set a general word count goal. So maybe you start off at 1,000 words a day, Monday through Friday. Like that is your word count goal. And it all adds up to those 80,000 words or 85,000 words. And then if you discover that 1,000 word goal is so easy for you to achieve, raise it. Yeah, it's the thing with any goal is that it should always be slightly outside of your comfort zone, right? It needs to be a little bit of a challenge. You want to keep it realistic yet, but it should always challenge you just slightly. I mean, when I first started, I think I started off as like 1,500 words when I was just doing word count without the 30 days. So this was, I think, some other book. But what I noticed is that I could consistently raise the bar then to 3,000 words. And then I could do 5,000 words. So I kept pushing myself to do more and more each day because I proved to myself that I could. But the thing is, you have to prove to yourself that you can first. And that's all about just really getting into those flows and knowing that if you have an hour to write, how fast can you actually write? And again, that's so individual to us. Here's another tip for y'all. If you know you have an hour to write and you know you can usually hammer out 1,500 words in that hour if you're consistently working, make sure to spend your day before you actually have your writing time planning out what you're going to write. So that way you don't have to waste any time in that hour to think about what you want to write about. So if you spend time leading into your writing session, knowing exactly what you're going to write about, It helps it go so much faster, and it helps you feel productive, which is what keeps you going, right? Is when you're able to look at your work and be like, all right, I nailed that goal. Cool. I'm going to go on to the next one. Like, or wow, I made a lot of progress. This is fabulous. I'm going to keep going. So that's word count. Reverse word count is working in the other direction. We have some really great spreadsheets with these too, but what you can do is, again, maybe it's 85,000 words is your ultimate goal. You're looking at 30 days or however long it's going to be. Some people's minds work better where they are looking like, okay, today I've got 85,000 words to write. Tomorrow, I'm going to knock out 5,000 words. Guess what? I only have 80,000 words left now. The next day after that, another 5,000 words. I only have 75,000 words now. So they really love seeing that number decrease in their goal. And then other people on the flip side, the original word count, like seeing that number increase as they get closer to their goal. So you see how it all depends on how your mind operates, what motivates you. That's why it's so important to tap into that and really play around with what's going to get me excited, which element of that keeps me inspired. Another goal setting technique is that time spent. This one I struggle with because I feel like it's not as clear as these other goals. It's harder to really track your progress. And this is, I can set aside 30 minutes per day to work on my book. I'm okay if you implement this technique just because it is still about that consistency and owning becoming a writer and what that looks like. Like if you're regularly writing 30 minutes a day, I mean, that's great. Makes you a better writer. That consistency, that discipline, it's going to add up, right? It's that one foot in front of the other. You're still making progress. It's just harder to really judge your progress in that 30 minutes. So, but like I said, if that's all you can do, that's still another great technique. And I'd rather you use that than no goal setting at all. So another one is story events. This is more particular if you are writing like a memoir. It's going to be all of the stories that you really want to write, which comes back down to having a very specific structure and having that plotting down from yesterday. Then you know exactly like today I'm going to write the story related to the climax of the book. Today I'm going to write following action event number 2 on my 3-act structure. So it helps you really plan that out. Like, what does that look like? How am I continually moving forward in this book? And then book milestones is more of the entire path of what does it take to write, publish, promote my book. So it's like everything that we cover in the Soulful Author Journey program, but it's setting that up by book milestones. Like I want my first draft completed by this date. I know it's got to go to an editor and I expect the editor to have it turn around in 4 weeks. I'm going to spend 2 weeks implementing the editor's changes. I'm going to send it off to beta readers for 3 weeks. I'm going to, during this time, have the cover designer work on my cover. So it's setting up like a full timeline of your entire book project. But again, it's powerful because then it really helps for those who like the big picture and they like to know how each step, how each action is contributing. This is a great one to work with, but you are then looking at the entire book picture versus just writing your book. So one thing to keep in mind, get some water real fast. I'm kind of a nerd if you haven't picked up on that yet. And I love this idea because I spent a lot of time in the corporate world sitting at my office. And for most corporate jobs, you're going to have your work and you're busy. But then you also have this downtime where you can't really do things yet that you want to do. You still have to do company things, but they're just more fillers versus like things that actually feel productive. And I used to always sit there and be like, oh man, I have all this free time. Gosh, it would be nice if I could be writing my book at this free time on someone else's dollar, right? Because I'm not doing anything else. But I couldn't. And what I realized is that if you spend 30 minutes per day writing every day for a full year, that equates to almost 2 months of working a full-time job Monday through Friday, specifically on your book. So all those times thinking about like dreaming of, man, if I could do this, and then I would go home, I would be tired, and I would never work on my book. If you can look at just doing it even for 30 minutes per day for a full year, like if you don't have any urgency to write it, but you want that consistency, the discipline, that's pretty cool to think of it as being 2 full months and a 9 to 5 job simply writing. I mean, when you look at it in that perspective, like how much could you do? Your book could probably get done. And then not only that, but when you write for those 30 minutes, it'll usually translate into more time because you'll be hooked or finally getting on a roll and you won't want to stop. And now when I say things like, those 30 minutes, like with the goal setting, keep in mind that this is like closing the door, shutting off your phone, disconnecting the Wi-Fi, pushing away all distractions, and truly just writing and nothing else. Setting that timer and making sure that the only thing you're doing right now is writing as fast as you can. So let's talk about too, how to actually find that time for writing or make the time for writing, because you are the only one that can control your time, right? As I mentioned, I chose to write the most that I've ever done in my life when I just had my second baby. And I was only getting about 2 very interrupted hours of sleep a night. I mean, it was rough. I was struggling with postpartum depression during that time. It was just a rough period. But I knew my why had solidified. I knew I wanted to show my kids the importance of having those clear dreams and show them that they are able to reach those dreams. So I committed to it. And then 10 months after that, I had, 5 books that were completed. I mean, it wasn't easy. I buckled down because my why for doing so was the strongest it had ever been. And the payoff as a result was beautiful. Like when I won my first award for one of my books, my 3-year-old at the time, just how excited he was. And he still talks about it to this day, that mommy won an award for one of her books. And it's just like in those moments, you know that everything you poured into it was worth it because they're going to remember it because of the way that they're already talking about it. So the difference was knowing my why, setting clear goals, and outlining in every single free 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes that I had what I was going to work on when I had the chance to work on it. I never let my book fall out of my eyesight priority. I found it as, a little bit under, but as important as my kids. So don't just think about the end result. You have to feel it. That is your true inspiration. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these time management techniques. And like I said, these are ones that I have applied in my life over the past 5 years, and I've encouraged my clients to apply. And this is how we see results. So number 1, analyze your schedule, track your time in pure, honest details. What I mean by this is literally look at every single minute of your day. How's it being spent? Is there any time of it that's being wasted? Avoid the voids. I mean, do you guys get the, like on your iPhones, you get the screen time notifications like weekly? It'll show you like the amount of screen time from one week to the next and whether it's up or down from the week before. Sometimes I look at this stuff and I'm like, there's no way I was on social media for that long. Like I'm really big into like, I'll check social media like for no longer than a minute, right? I'll quickly check Facebook, quickly check Instagram, and I'm off. But if you're doing that like 30 times a day, guess what? It adds up, right? That's a little excessive. I don't think I do it that often. I don't know. My phone would know better than I do. But the point is that those minutes add up. And you're like, where did my time go? Well, you're taking little detours like that and they turn into voids. How often do you click on one link and then another and another, and suddenly you're down the rabbit hole? So track your time, spend some time figure out where every single one of those minutes go. Become a detective in your own life for a little bit. Ask for help. Y'all, this was a big one that I struggled with, and I see a lot of my clients struggle with it. Whether it's a spouse, your parents, whether it's a group of friends where you can exchange time watching the kids for free at different periods. Ask for help, try to figure out where those are, like whatever it is that's taking your time. Is there any help that you can get for a temporary period while you work on this book? Let them know it's a priority. Let them know that this is something you extremely value. It's a very important goal in your life. Again, a lot of times we approach this book as like, oh, it's just a hobby. No one else is going to take it seriously. No one cares that I'm working on it. Well, have you talked to them about it? Have you communicated how important it actually is to you and how you really want their help if they're able to give it to you? The worst that they're going to say is no, that they can't help you. And it's not about someone else taking on the burden of your dream. That's not what it's about. People truly want to help you if they can. But you have to ask. You have to communicate to them how important it is to write this book. And for many people who are even scared to share with their family and friends that they're writing a book, that's problem number one. Because that means you have yet to own yourself and really step into the confidence that you're writing this book and that it's important. So you have to own it before you're able to expect anyone else to also see the importance of it and be willing to step up and help. Focus on only 30 minutes per day if you have to. If you just feel like your schedule is just crammed, look at where can you get 30 minutes per day to work on this. That's only 2% of your day, y'all. That should be doable no matter what you take on, even if it's temporarily sleeping for 30 minutes less. Again, it's temporary. We're going to talk about this in a bit, but writing a book is not every day for the rest of your life, unless you want it to be. Identify those energy and time drainers. We all have those. We have things that give us energy. We have things that we know suck our energy out so much more than anything else. You have to take ownership of your time, of your energy. What are the things that you can let go of because they drain too much of it? It's why you are empty at the end of the night. What do we have obligations to that we shouldn't really have an obligation to? I mean, if you're putting someone else's obligations, this is outside your family, someone else's obligations over your dream, just to, look good or just to make a good impression. I mean, those are the things that we need to be able to look at in our life because many of us are guilty of it. Schedule it, treat your writing time as important as a meeting with a client or a meeting with someone else or a doctor's appointment. Put it on your schedule. No one can mess with that time. That's just your time in your office or wherever else where you can shut everything out and work on your book. Include cushion room if you do that, because we do know life happens. Life happens, things come up, you get stuck in traffic. Include some cushion room when you can, knowing that you have to accommodate. Learn to say no. Another one that many of us struggle with. Learn to say no when you have to, because if it's a priority to you, if it's a value, it has to be reflected like that in your life. We talked about this a little bit before, but when people are looking at your life and seeing how you spend your time, what do you think they think your values are? What do you think they see your priorities as being? Because it all comes down to how we're spending our time and how those things are reflected, right? So we can say we value something, we can say this is a priority, but if we're not actually dedicating our time and our energy to those things, they're not actually values or priorities because we're not making the actions to support those things, taking the actions to support those things. Set daily intentions with nightly follow-ups. Set your plans for that morning. This is what I'm going to achieve today. And then make sure there's some sort of check-in process at night. Did I achieve this today? And if not, why? How can I conquer this differently come tomorrow to make sure that I do this tomorrow? Accountability partners help with this, especially someone who is another writer, because they understand more than anyone else the energy, the time that goes into needing to write, that space that needs to be there to be able to write. So having someone where you guys can keep each other accountable. Now, the caution to this, though, is to make sure it's someone who's actually going to keep you accountable and not someone where you guys allow excuses to be exchanged between each other. Oh, it was just a really long day. This and this happened. You know what? I get it. It was a long day for me too. Let's just take today off. We'll tackle it again tomorrow. No, you have to have those accountability partners that actually hold you accountable. Put consequences in place. I mean, truly put consequences in place. That can always help as well. We just did this actually with some of my own books with my integrator, Allison. You know, the consequence was if I don't finish these books, I have to go live every day on social media for all of January. I'm not a fan of going live, especially not every single day. So if you guys see me showing up on social media live every day in January, then you know that I did not write the books that I said I was going to write. But those are the things you need that help continue to drive you, right? And hold you accountable to your goals. The power of 3 goals per day. This is my favorite one to implement. This is the one that helps me the most. Every day I'll have 3 goals that I have to achieve. And if I don't do it, I can't do anything else until those 3 goals are achieved. And I mean, they can be like, one can be with writing, maybe one is with working out, maybe one is, you know, something with your kids or family or whatever it may be. But set those 3 goals per day. And don't allow yourself to watch Netflix or, for me even, to read a book. Like, I love to read, but I won't read a book if I haven't achieved those 3 goals for the day. Write when you have minutes of downtime, even if it's only about what you'll write about when you sit down to write later. So for example, I spend a lot of time in the kid pickup line for school. Guess what? That is a powerful time to be able to write as I'm already just sitting in the car. My Wi-Fi doesn't tend to work, or cellular data doesn't tend to work in the line because so many people are on their phones. So my only choice is to write. Doctor's office, same sort of thing. And even if it's just planning out what you're going to write when you're actually in front of your computer, then do that. Choose daily or weekly goals. Kind of like that goal setting too, but know what you're going to be working on every day or every week to achieve your dream. I like daily goals because, again, you can measure them. The week can get away from you in no time, right? The days can go by and you don't want that. Daily goals are a lot better. Wake up an hour early every day for a month, or stay up an hour later. I was doing this when I was writing that second book in 30 days. Well, I wasn't sleeping, period, honestly, during that point, but it was because I knew I had those goals, those word counts to reach, and I did it no matter what. Wouldn't recommend that. It's not healthy, but I'm just saying you have to pick what works best for you. Ban social media, Netflix, other distractions for a month. Y'all, it's doable. The world is not going to stop, I promise you. And in fact, Netflix will probably be even more fun when you take 30 days away from it and then come back and see all the new shows that have been added. Spend Sundays planning your week. So really just say, this is what I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Stick to the writing like a meeting. Use the post-it note technique. This one's powerful. You know, say if you're looking at the month of July, write on each post-it, should be July 1st, July 2nd, July 30th, July 3rd, whatever it might be. And you're going to have all of those post-its on your wall. You have your goal set for that day. So say if it's word count, you know, on July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, your goal is to write 3,000 words on each of those days. Maybe July 4th, you want some variety in your schedule. So your goal on that day is to write, 4,000 words. Whatever it might be, put your goals on those Post-it notes. And then when they're done, when you've reached that goal for that day, take it off, throw it in the trash. There's something very therapeutic and rewarding with that whole transaction. It just feels good, and it feels like you did indeed do something, right? You didn't just shut down your computer and you reached your word count goal. You actually did a physical action with it. The other thing about that is you cannot take those Post-it notes off until you reach that goal for the day. So say if yesterday was just chaotic, in order to remove that Post-it note, I have to do yesterday's goal and today's goal, and then I'll get to remove both of them. It can be torture sometimes, but again, a very effective technique. Focus on one thing at a time. It's been proven that when we multitask, we're actually using more energy, we're expending more energy than what we do if we focus on one thing at a time. Keep that in mind. Reward yourself often. Reward yourself. We do not do this enough. Go out and get ice cream, do something, buy yourself a new book, whatever it might be. Reward yourself when you reach these tiny milestones of achievements to keep yourself going. Mix up your goals. Like if you find that they're getting stagnant, boring, mix them up, bring something else into the mix to keep them exciting. Be intentional with your time. Again, going back to like one of the first slides today, you are the only one that owns your time. Be intentional with how every single one of those minutes are spent. Intention is one of my favorite words for that reason, because it's powerful. Know your priorities, know your values, be consistent with whatever it is that you do. Consistency is going to pay off. And when you adopt that as part of your author identity, you are going to see so many rewards as a result. Because again, that's what makes professional writers professional writers. Remember, all of this is temporary. Most of us will spend 4 to 6 months writing a book on average, okay? What can you do for 4 to 6 months? What can you give up for 4 to 6 months? And maybe it's just a month if you are really ambitious and you want to write a book in a month. Just remember, you're not doing things for years to come. It's truly in that moment. So what does that look like for you? Get involved with a writing group for accountability or hire a book coach. This is why things like that exist. Again, like our Soulful Author Journey program, we have the community of other writers who are right there with you making progress in their books. But then you also have the book coaches, the people who have done this time and time again, who have been on the other side, who know what the struggles are like and who can help you with that accountability, the inspiration, the motivation to keep going, and also answer any questions that come up and provide feedback. Community, massive. Like you want to see success and you haven't yet on your own, that's the trick too. All right, I know we're running into time. So let's just briefly talk about writer's block. It truly, when you hear writer's block, it tends to be the name for fear or procrastination above all else. Y'all, don't let that stop you. I cringe when I hear the term writer's block, because my first question is, have you taken any action to actually break out of the writer's block? Or are you just saying, oh, I have writer's block, I have to sit back and wait for the inspiration, the muse, to strike again, because I just don't know where to go? What are the actions that you're taking to get yourself out of this? Whether that's brainstorming with other people, that is huge. Like the energy that gets exchanged, we talked about that a little bit yesterday. When you have people that you can brainstorm with, it's thrilling. It's so exciting, because then you get brand new ideas that you haven't had before. Try new creative mode, try painting. I like to pick up painting if I feel stuck, because there's just something that it does to my creativity. It opens up a brand new faucet of creativity. Try music. I'm a big music person. I think I mentioned yesterday, like my very first book idea, especially, well, most of my book ideas are actually inspired by lyrics. I love creating stories based off of lyrics that I hear. So listen to music. I'm also a big advocate of creating a playlist that perfectly sets the tone, like a movie, for the book that you're writing. And one of my favorite things to do is that when you feel stuck, put on the playlist, close your eyes, and feel, because it's emotion based, right? Feel the emotions from that song and use that for your inspiration to write this book. Other things that you can take action in, search discussion boards. One of my favorites is Reddit's Suggest Me a Book, because you can get a feel for what readers are looking for. Or if you feel stuck on like, what would a reader want in this element? Or what's their favorite, like what would appeal to them? Or what's another technique that could help them? Whatever it might be, post it in these discussion boards, and you'll see so many people provide feedback to help you out. And then you feel inspired because you're actually talking with your target audience then, right? How bad does your main character have it in your book? If you're writing fiction, this is one of the best questions you can ask. Can it get worse for them? if you can make it worse, that always helps. So it's kind of a dire one to talk about, but truly it helps in fiction writing. I've heard famous authors say it can always be worse, so make it worse before giving the reader hope that it'll all get better. So start in another part of the book instead. If you are working on this like one chapter at a time, one story at a time, and you just feel stuck while you're trying to write that story, switch it up. Go to a new chapter, go to a new story, see if something else is motivating you and helping you write in that time. Or you can pick up like the character's life at a different point, or, you know, whatever it might be. Just make sure that if you are hopping around in the book, that you're always going back to connect those pieces. You're adding in the right transitions for that flow element. So it's totally okay to hop around if you feel like you need to. Just make sure those transitions are always there. If nonfiction, I mean, you can go back again to just connecting with your target audience. Facebook groups, y'all, they're free. And there are so many out there with different niches. Do some searches on Facebook, and LinkedIn even is another good one. Start talking to your target audience. Find people who have experience with XYZ, get to know them more, hear their stories. Especially if you're writing self-help or inspirational, find out what their actual pain points are. So then your book can help them through it. And then finally, mix up your writing space and your location. Sometimes we get so used to our routine, like this is what I'm doing, that the creativity starts to fade out. So mixing it up again sometimes helps spark it. I have this weird thing that I do. You guys are learning all about my little tidbits here, but so a lot of times I'll write. I've got my laptop, I've got my desktop here. A lot of times I'll take my laptop and just go over to the couch, where I'm using the couch as a desk, but then I'm writing from the floor, like the floor is my seat. And there's just something about that changes things for me. I can't describe it, but same thing if you can go to a park and write, or go to the bookstore or coffee shop, whatever it might be. Just try switching up your location if you're continually feeling stuck. You can find inspiration from brand new places. And then if anything has worked for your writer's block that we haven't discussed today, I mean, there are modules open in the From Blank Pages to Writing Machine actual course, like where we post the replays of these discussions. So be sure to use the comments in there if you have anything that you think will help someone else because it's worked in your own life. Like, let's start creating that community, because gosh, the more we can help other people and share our stuff, the better the world is, because that means more and more books are being birthed and put out into it. So, all right, let's talk about the homework. Again, if you haven't printed it off or looked at it, there's a full workbook for this workshop to make sure that you are taking action steps and progressing and writing your book. So be sure to check that out. And in one of those, it's a before you start worksheet under day 2 to answer all of your questions about your book, so you can feel confident in the direction that it's headed. Determine your why, and then include your emotions behind your why. Is your why deep enough to help you complete this book? Is it going to motivate you when times get tough? Will it anchor you in the storm when suddenly everything feels like it's trying to prevent you from writing this book? Is your why strong enough to keep you anchored and keep you going? Set clear writing goals. Choose one of the methods we talked about today. Have that flexibility and freedom to switch it up if need be. And then figure out some time management approaches that might work for you. I always consider these two as like a proactive plan, right? Again, if things come up, because they always do, how am I going to address them? What sort of time management techniques can I put into place now or have ready to go when I need them? So that way I'm not thrown off track. Experiment with multiple ones to ensure your goals are met. And remember, this is temporary with writing your book. So what can you do on a temporary basis to ensure that your book is written? All right, y'all, that is all for day 2 of the From Blank Pages to Writing Machine workshop. Thanks for hanging with me today. I really, really appreciate it. Tomorrow we will be talking about the big picture author journey as far as, okay, what do you do then once your book is written? What does that actually look like? So I can start making plans, filling out my vision for that. We'll talk about publishing and really just the other ways you step into this author life to make the biggest impact possible. Thank you all again for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow.